Good day, everyone. My name is Retnagowri. I will be talking to you on how the EndNote software works. Later, there will be a hands-on session on the 9th of June, but these are some pre-talks so that you get some information of how this works so that the hands-on session is purely interactive. So what am I going to cover? So I've actually got 4 parts here, starting with an introduction to EndNote. So you get a little bit of overview about EndNote. So what are all the things in these 4 parts are going to cover are basically how to formulate a search strategy, to be able to identify resources and utilize them well, to know what EndNote is, how you could use EndNote, and some basic information about EndNote, as well as how it can be used as citation in Word and PowerPoint, as well as some background of search engines and software such as Web of Science and PubMed. So starting off, okay, I've the talk itself, which is on EndNote. What is it? It's basically a reference management software which is designed to help an individual store, organize, cite, and format their references without having to manually key in every single word, full stop, comma, and so forth. It is a freely available software to all staff and students. So you can actually try and get the software from through our ICT help. In fact, if you have your student portal, you can actually download it from there. I'll be showing you those steps shortly. So you have a research project, you end up doing what? You end up reading from the internet, you end up reading from textbooks, you end up reading articles, yes? So when you read all of these things, and you have all of them references, the old school, very, very old school, I'm sure some of you are using these kind of reference softwares, even if it's not EndNote, maybe the one which is available by Microsoft itself. But having said that, the old school method was to then know all the authors and papers you have, you print it out, put into a file. Later, you'll have to then type everything up and do everything manually. Not just type your words and your paragraphs, but you have to type the references up manually in Word document, and sometimes even then in PowerPoint. So that's what EndNote is going to try and do is to make it more automated, basically. Why? Because you can actually import and search your references in the databases such as Web of Science and PubMed. You can in fact search it through EndNote itself. I'll show you a little example towards the end. It in fact automatically, as I said, creates your reference list for you in the order which is needed, from author, the year, the title, and so forth. So it basically then ends up being a database of its own of references which you commonly use. So you can just call it theses, and then you put it all into one bit. And within that EndNote, you can then group it into subgroups. I'll get to that point shortly. So you create the library, then you import your references in. You could import by searching through EndNote itself. You can import it through by when you look at PubMed or Web of Science, then you can import it into EndNote when you're reading it. There's links in those kind of channels, in those kind of sites. And then you can organize it. So within EndNote, then you organize it. Okay, these kind of references are to do with what? To do with pathophysiology. These kind of references that do with treatment of the disease. So you can then group it, subgroup it within the EndNote file, so that when you want to write a certain section, you know all the references that are related to it are in a section. You can look through just the papers which you need, rather than it being, so you organize yourself basically. So how do you get the software, right? So how do you download the software? One, as I said, you can go and get help from the ICT themselves. Take your laptop there and give it to them, and they will put EndNote for you. And the other is, you can even do this for SPSS, in fact, to get the help to put the software onto your computer. But I believe with SPSS, you have to use a LAN cable within the university to actually efficiently use it. But in terms of EndNote, it's freely available, so you can even use it from home. So where do you get it? So I'm showing you my portal, so not the student portal, but my actual portal. It's under the ICT information. There are a lot of tabs. And eventually, if you keep going down, well, as I roll down, I'll get to another section of it, which ends up saying download softwares. So then I click on it. When I click on download softwares, it actually gives me all the different kinds of softwares I can download. EndNote, SPSS are under main softwares. Obviously, there's the whole Office 365, which is basically all the Microsoft softwares. And the one which you want, well, for this talk, we're looking at EndNote, will be under main softwares. So you click on that, and then you'll see, scroll down to around 5 and 6, EndNote should be there, and you'll say click here. When you say click here, that University still has licenses for these EndNotes from 7, 8, 9, and currently 20. You can actually download it for both Mac as well as for Windows. Okay, so Mac and Windows. And in fact, there's an installation guide which you can download to assist you with the installation process. But I'm going to cover a few steps here. So you will click install, and then you will end up clicking. This is like any software which you download, obviously. So you will click onto the icon. It will then open up a whole lot of steps which you will blindly say next and yes to. So there we go. I accept blindly, and then you say next. And again, you go all the way next until you get to the point where you say finish. So once that is done, when it's successfully installed, it'll end up being an icon in your start button under, if you go alphabetically, it should be under E. It will also, when you click on it and open it up, you can then create a new library. You create the new library so that you can start searching using, which I'll show you shortly, information, and you start to build your reference list or your references into the EndNote software. It also becomes an icon at the end. So you got file, this the usual until help, but actually if you have installed the software successfully, it will be also a tab in Word, as well as it will be a tab in PowerPoint. Okay, so it will be all available through all the Microsoft softwares, so that you can automatically insert your references without having to manually type references up. So remember how I mentioned, I'll show you how to search, right? So to search, so you got file, you go to tools, and you go online search. So under online search, you will then end up getting, so you can either say Web of Science, or you can even go to under P, go to PubMed. It should be there. Once you do that, and if it's something which you commonly use, it will end up being easy short link will be on the corner here. So say now I'm using PubMed. You can choose to search by title, year, DOI number, PMID number, and so forth. So in this case, I'm just giving an example of searching renal cell carcinoma. Now keep in mind, I didn't put this in inverted commas. Later I'll explain a little bit of this. I believe if you attended the systematic review talks and the literature review talks, we explain a little bit of that, but I will re-explain that just in case I have a different audience here. And like I said, I want to know all the renal cell carcinoma papers in the 2014. Clearly, this is searching not renal cell carcinoma, but every single word. And it could be just renal disease and not the cancer. Okay, so it ends up showing me quite a lot of papers in 2014. So this is just introducing you about the software. I'm not going, in the next few parts, I'll show you how to understand how the software works more. So it ends up then populating all the papers. Then you can click on any particular one to see whether that paper is relevant, you want it or not, to add it on and so forth, by screening through the keywords and the abstract to see whether it's valid. So you can actually see the abstract should be there. So that's for this section. So this is until the point of knowing what EndNote is, how it can work, how you can search, how you install it, and so forth. I'll see you in part 2. Thank you. So now, the next part, I want to elaborate a little bit more here about the library as well as Web of Science. So what do I want to elaborate about? So the first thing is exactly how you can use the library to get Web of Science related articles. Of course, you can use PubMed. It's easier to search because you don't need library access or university access. But having said that, there are some relevant papers using Web of Science. So how do you go about it? So you can go to the student website, and under your student website, one of the tabs end up being the library. Then you will end up logging in using your username and password. You see the A to Z online databases. So these are all the databases which are available. PubMed should be there too. Web of Science, Scopus, and all of it will be here in alphabetical order. The other way to get some help if you are having issues trying to log in, you can in fact put your name and student email, and you can start chatting with the librarian, which is a live chat, and they'll assist you on how to go about this. So you then log in, as I said, with your barcode, which is basically the back of the card. There's an X followed by numbers, and that is what you put in. And when you do that, you will then, obviously, you'll do that at the point after clicking Web of Science, it will then ask you for it. So here, so you put nowadays it allows you to put your student number, but if it doesn't work, it's basically the barcode number at the back of your card and the password you try and get from the librarian. There is a password which they have given me, which is 1422. I'm not sure whether that is a standard password or is it specific for me as using my barcode. But having said that, you could give that a try, but if it doesn't work, then go ahead and ask the librarian for the password. Okay. Now here, once you actually get into the page, you will end up having all fields and you'll be on the Web of Science page. Just like you saw EndNote earlier, you can search things according to topic, title, you can search by author or the year of publication and so forth. And you start to put your keywords in. And once you've done that, and in my case, I've just put in a very broad topic, cancer prevention. So it would have searched prevention, it would have searched cancer, it would have searched cancer prevention. Okay, and it's any kind of cancer basically. And it's telling me that there is this many papers, 100,000 papers basically. And you continue to then, if you want to export references which you want, you can actually select the ones which you want, and you can export it. You can see where you want to export it to and in what format. You can even, in fact, export it as plain text. Now, if you're using, I believe, non-EndNote softwares, there you then can do it as RefWorks or as a RIS file. So this is safe because then this will work whether you're using an EndNote software or one of the other references software which are out there, like Mendeley and so forth. Okay, so this is exporting from the database to the library. You can get the full text by clicking under the full text link or by the publisher. When you do so, it will then pop up the full text for you. Now, when there is no full text available through the library, there's not to worry. You can actually then ask the library, request the library to get you the full text. Now, I believe there is a limit per year, so do clarify what is the limit and so forth, and be choosy in terms of how you want to get the full text. And if you can't get it through the library or get it through, if it's not already really available, you can in fact contact the actual authors or the corresponding authors through other softwares like ResearchGate and so forth. You can message them and say that if possible, can I get a copy of your PDF, and they will send it to you. Obviously, you can reference it and so forth, but don't openly share that around because they are just sharing it because they have a copy of it. So that there are other ways of getting it if you want to, but it really depends on how important that paper is for your use. So there are many other databases. I've already kind of covered PubMed, and I'll be covering PubMed and then covered Web of Science, but the Science Direct people use Google Scholar. I mean, it is a good way of reading in general and noting down DOI numbers and so forth, but do any systematic search, I advise stick with PubMed and Web of Science. But even I find Google Scholar quite easy to use in terms of looking for papers if I want to brush up on a topic to read. But when it comes to me searching it for a lit review or searching for a systematic review write-up, I actually stick with PubMed and Web of Science. Thank you for listening to this section. Now we're going to move on to part 3. Hi. So now next is about search strategies and a bit more on PubMed. I just kind of talked about it a little bit in introduction just to introduce you to EndNote, but in this case, I'm going to actually talk about PubMed itself in a bit more detail. But before we do that, it is very important using the right search strategies. As I said, a little bit of this was covered in previous talks when we talked about systematic search and so forth, but it's important that that you get a bit of a refresher here, because you will be using this when you have the hands-on session to actually search all the papers which will be relevant to your topic. So let's begin. So first, as we said, you need to know what topic you're dealing with, whether it's to do with cancer, whether it's to do with ED, whether it is to do with anything or to do with education. Your topic is dependent on what your thesis is going to be studying. So what's the broad topic? So you write it down. I believe most of you should have a research question or in the process of formulating a research question. So you'll have kind of an idea what those things that you want to look for. From the research question, you will then list keywords, okay? A list of keywords which are important to address your research question, and then you will try to look for the papers, articles, as well as policy documents, books, and so forth. Okay, and as I've mentioned, there are many databases and ways of searching for information. So as I said, develop your keywords. So then you think about your topics and scope. What exactly are you looking at? Are you looking at prediction? Are you looking at epidemiology? Are you looking at purely the outcome? You're comparing maybe 2 different interventions, 3 different interventions, and you're looking at a very specific outcome. So you want to see whether this kind of studies have been done in different regions before, looking at a little bit of a different angle. So you want to be able to get the basis literature very well done as possible. Then you start to design how you want to keep a record of all of this. Okay. So PubMed, I will get into PubMed, but do you remember, I hope if not, you can, I believe those talks by Jasmine and Tanya, and I also would like to thank Tanya. Some bits and pieces of these EndNote talks which I'm doing are partly from her and from me. We have been doing this talk for quite a number of years already. This is the first time where we are doing it as hybrid, where we do a pre-recorded lecture and the hands-on is more, which is live. But having said that, some of these points which are coming up are from her. So such as in Boolean operators. So what are those? So basically, those things are the words as and, or not. I'll start to give you some examples of that. And using trications, such as putting a star, quotation marks. I'll get into examples for this. And then searching a specific field and using the filter in order to narrow down your searches and so forth. Okay, now let's start with the word and. So and is when you want to look for 2 things, but you want papers which will be both. So you don't want just papers which are cleft lips or paper which are cleft. You want that it actually are papers which have both of it. So you are focused on the middle bit, because what happens is when you search one, it ends up having, so individually, they end up having over 12,000 to 17,000 papers. But when you actually put the N, there's more papers where it actually involves both. It's 11 5,770. Still a lot of papers, but so there you go. So it ends up giving you these papers in PubMed. Okay, so this is giving you the example. So next, or that is when you want to broaden your search. So N is when you narrow down your search, or is when you want to broaden your search, such as you don't want to just limit it to just stones, which are for all 3 stones, or only the 2 stones and so forth. So you're not focused in the middle bit, you're focused for the whole, everything, as long as the paper covers one of the stone studies, whether it's kidney and this, you want everything, is when you use the or. So as you can see, on its own, it ends up being this many papers, but when you include everything, it ends up being over 5,000 papers. So, and then again, so this is just giving you examples when you look at it individually, and then when you end up doing the search and putting using the word or. Okay. Next, not. What is not? So in this case, the example is you want papers. So there will be people who are depressed and anxious, and there are people who are just purely anxious, and then there's people who are purely depressed. In this case, you want the papers which are people who are anxious but not depressed. So in order to do that, so you actually want, you see this little circle here, so you want the papers which are, they are anxious and purely anxious, and they shouldn't be depressed. It's basically the papers you want to focus on. Okay, so it ends up reducing the numbers for you from over 40 to just over 400,000 to 150. Okay, so basically this is how not works. This is just giving you the example when you do the live search. So the minute you put the word not, it reduces the numbers for you. Okay, now quotation marks. So remember, I was already touching a little bit of this when I was telling you I'm just searching without putting the quotation mark. So when you put the quotation mark, so when I had this now, renal cell carcinoma, if you remember the first part, it actually searched cancer on its own, renal on its own, as well as carcinoma on its own, so cell on its own. So this will be a lot of papers in 2014. So I was very specific about the year, but I didn't put the quotation marks. But if I did, it definitely would not have been that many papers. And why? As you can see, the minute you put the quotation marks, it will search papers which have this word in this order exactly, and it will search exactly like this. Not colon on its own, cancer, it can even then end up including breast cancer papers and all the different kinds of cancers, right? So it will reduce the number. It's another way of narrowing down your search and being more specific. Now, what is trication? Okay, now see what happens here is you have words which can be brought. So I can say treatment, I can say therapy, I can say a lot of things for the same thing which we mean. But if we are going to type and look for each of it manually, it is going to be quite daunting. So you end up putting a star at the end of THERP and you put a star. Basically, that will then include every single different forms it may have. And same. So if you want to incubation and so forth, you put a star, it will include all the different variations to that word. Of course, this is not going to include treatment, so you'll then have to search the word treatment separately, but at least it will cover all the different kinds of ways the word therapy can appear, so that it covers everything. That's how the wildcard putting a star works, okay? And when you do that, it will, as you can see, it will populate the variations automatically, and hence that is how it works. I'm not going to give you examples. I think you get the idea here of how these different things work. Then the next is field search. So you might want to, which I showed you a little bit, you can search according to keywords, title, and so forth. So you can actually use the field text to help you. And in fact, that will help you limit it. So you can filter based on, I only want papers in the last 10 years. You can filter based on, I only want papers which are English. I only want to focus in terms of bladder cancer in females. So and that's how you can narrow down your search more. But that really depends on what your research question and topic is. But there's ways of bringing it down to papers which are more relevant to you, rather than having a whole list of papers which you will have to go through to figure out whether it's relevant or not. You do it using these search engines. You can do this in PubMed. You can even do this in EndNote. Okay, so now just an example. As I said, I'd like to thank Tanya. This question is actually set up by her. So basically, can this be used in breast cancer among post-menopausal women? Okay, and then how is the physical activity associated with overall survival and quality of life in breast cancer survival? So these are research questions, right? So with those research questions, you can search just breast cancer. I want all the papers to do with breast cancer. Ends up having a lot of papers. And then you can search in terms of the drug of interest, and it'll end up showing the papers. And you look in terms of post and for women, it ends up showing you this over 1,000 papers. Now, but your research question is when it involves all of it. So you will end up putting breast cancer and so it will narrow down. Now it tells you papers where it's only focusing on this. It's about 182 papers. Keep in mind these examples are from some time back, so there might be a little bit more than this papers right now, but say, so it tells you the total number of papers. Then if you want to even more specific and narrow down more, maybe you only want to focus on prevention. So then you add the word. It'll narrow it down more for you. So now there's only 44 papers. So now how do you search in EndNote? So you can do the same as I said. You can do the search in PubMed on its own website or in EndNote. So you can click PubMed and you can actually search it here. So say you've already searched it there and you already have a list of PMID numbers. You can actually copy the PMID number, and if you search it, it will come up in EndNote for you. Or you can just go directly here and you limit your search within here. Sometimes it is good to do search there and export it into EndNote when you are doing it initially. When you are already have your library going, you can then use the online search within the EndNote software itself. Okay, so that's now ending of part 3, and we will come to the last bit of how to include all of this into a Word document and how it works. Of course, I'm hoping you'll understand this is just background on knowledge. You will be able to apply this if you come for the hands-on session. We will go to the final part 4, on EndNote. What am I doing here? It's just called part 4. It is to how to actually insert these references into Word, and as well as to build the reference list within Word document. I'm not going to show it in PowerPoint. We can try that out in the live session. This is just so you get an idea that how it works and so forth. Okay, so you want to cite in theses, you want to insert these things. Are you going to manually type every single author name and look at the format and type it according to the format, put your dot and commas all in order? Yeah, sometimes it may seem quicker by doing that instead of learning the software, but actually by learning the software, it actually reduces your time in the long run. So using the software is wise. How can we go about this? So say you have your references and you've listed and you've searched it. So you will then copy it into your reference list. Once you kind of copied it into your reference list and you've selected that reference in EndNote, you can say you want to insert that into your Word document. Okay, so you say insert selected references, look at 2, and then you will insert it. It will end up having this squiggly little bracket, so it's not a circular bracket, and that's when you know it had, and it'll be in gray, which means it's EndNote linked. And so you'll insert it, and once you've done that, it can convert. So once you have inserted it and you are happy with all your inserts, it can then automatically convert it into a number format. So in your case, so this is not superscribe, but basically it's in a square bracket format. This is Vancouver, but not following a thesis format. It will be superscribe. I can show you that in the live session when I meet y'all. But you basically have inserted, and so it will convert it into numbered version. Okay, and maybe you don't want it numbered version. So numbered version, Vancouver style. So the styles will be under here, under EndNote, and then here. And once you've done that, you say a paper wants it in author date style and not numbered style, as what you saw on the previous slide. You will then just click and it will automatically change. I'm going to show you a little bit. I'm going to share EndNote and I'll show you these examples soon. But this is just the step-by-step slides. So then you can convert it, your bibliography. So it will basically convert the funny Arab things into, as I said, the normal bracket. And at the bottom, it will end up going, if it's author date style, then be in alphabetical order at the back. If it's numbered style, it'll be according to number one, whatever number one is, it'll be 1, 2, 3, so it'll be numbered, the order will be numbers. In this case, author date style, the order will be in alphabetical order. And as you can see, it ends up doing it all for you systematically. I'll show you now by sharing EndNote itself, so you get an idea how it works. So what happens when you have inserted reference, but you want to get rid of one of it? Well, all you have to do is actually, you go and you click on this, you open, left click on it, you open it up and you say you want to edit, and you say you remove one of the citation, the one, which one do you want to remove? Once you remove it, it will then convert, say it was reference number 3, it'll go to 2, and so forth. So you don't need to manually delete things. For that, sometimes I do end up deleting and I'll update. I'll show you that shortly. So, okay, thank you for listening to this section. It's just a little bit. As I said, I want to show you the live session of how this whole thing works. So let's get to that, shall we? I would like to share the screen right now. I hope you can see this is a Word document. I've ended up typing something about renal cell carcinoma and in terms of liquid biopsy. I have just came up with some sentences, but I have not actually put in my references yet. And I believe I want to insert some references. So how do I go about it? So I showed you these slides earlier on the inserting, but you won't get the full idea until I show it to you as I do it. So that is why I have this little clip here for y'all. So in my case, I've got the EndNote 9 version. And I've already added the papers from before. So this is all the kidney cancer liquid biopsy papers. And I've kind of created a library and so forth. And you can see, so I've got all my references here. You can actually, as I said, you can actually group it if you need to, but I didn't because they basically are all in the area which I want. Now, how do I insert this? Okay, so I will end up, how do I insert this into, say I want to reference early cancer. So I'm going to EndNote, tab here. I can say I want to go to the software. So I say go EndNote, it will bring me to the, you have to have this database open in the background and you will then open it. It will bring you to this. Then in this case, I want to say kidney, searching is the wrong thing. So I'll change it to title. Okay. Oops, didn't come up. And I want a paper which is going to say it's epidemiology and risk. So say maybe I want to use this 2018 paper. So I will say it's a burden. We want something which is a bit more recent, but let's just go with that. I'm just showing you how to insert. I will then go to my Word document, okay, and I've already kind of placed it there, and I will insert the reference. It automatically does it in author date style for me, okay, well, it's an annotated style actually. But now let me show you. So yeah, but it did it automatically inserted easily for me, but that's not how I want it to look at the bottom, right? So I want it APA6 style. So then it will end up changing it. So you'll probably have to insert your, okay, so then say that's not the style you want it numbered, Vancouver, numbered style. You see, it just does it. All I'm doing is clicking. I'm not typing this up again and so forth. Now I've done that, but I want to insert a reference now for premature stage. Sorry, editing my sentence there. So now I have this and I want to insert more references in regards to the whole liquid biopsy itself, maybe. Okay, so here, I will go back. I'll put liquid biopsy. It's a lot of papers, and maybe I want to pick a few papers. Okay, so I'll just pick the papers which I want. So I'm just selecting it. You can in fact say shift and select all of it. So I can say shift and select all of it. So it selects all of it, and say I want all of it to be my reference for that particular sentence. So then I will end up inserting insert selected citations. So there we go, and it automatically updates. But wait, I want to add now another reference here. What do I do? Maybe I want to add this reference there. Let's go back. Okay, so I will end up picking, yeah, let's pick Manson. Let's see. All right, so I want to add this now to here. So if I say insert, select, it will automatically update it for you. So you can actually say none of these are the references. These are favorites, obviously, based on what I use. But if it's not there, don't worry. You can look for it. You can look for it by going to select another reference style. And there are many reference styles which are out there. Most of them are linked to journal formats or journals which are out there. So maybe you want BMC cancer. There you go, it changes it. So it will follow the format according to what the journal says. So sometimes you have to check because these things are preset. And if it's not actually available, that it will end up following what was a bit of an older version to it. So you have to check that what it's saying here and counter check. This is more if you're dealing with journals. If you're dealing with our theses, stick with the, it's not APAs, it's called APA6 style, which is actually author date style. The style which you want is the Vancouver style, but with the square brackets. So, and this should be actually superscribed. So it should be actually like that, but you can actually edit it. It's a bit more technical for me to show you those things. I can, but maybe I can show that when we meet in person, okay? But basically, this is how you can, this is how useful EndNote can be. So the other thing is, okay, yeah, so let me see if I can show you that. Now, where am I? Let's undo that. I wanted to show you if you click on this, you want to edit the reference, you can see more, and you can see you want to remove something or reorder something, you can go and do that. I'm not going to go into detail of that right now. Let's do that with your work. Okay, so this is how you can insert it into Word document. You can even do it in PowerPoint, actually. It'll be the same, it'll be similar. Okay, and then once you've done with that, of course the format here is the standard format because So you will have to then update it for it to look like Times. Okay, so, and there you go. So it looks a bit nicer. All right, so this is how you can cite while you write. Thank you for listening to all my mini talks. Do you want me to cover the one more thing? I think I can. Let me just see if I can edit as part of this, okay? All right, so just one more thing. So remember how I was going on about the formatting of the reference style. So under tools, you can the databases, but under edit, the output style. So remember how I said this now the Vancouver style, which we had, was not the square bracket or superscript or something like that, but that's the style which is the closest for what we suggest in terms of the thesis to go with Vancouver. But you can basically either go with numbered style or Vancouver style, but either way, none of it is super script. So how do we edit just that little bit? Okay, so let's just go with Vancouver, shall we? Okay, so we go to Vancouver. Is it opening it up? No, sorry. Edit, output style. So edit Vancouver style. And it will pop up where it is basically how it's going to look when it's cited, its template when it's being cited, and so forth. So here, basically, it'll be number in this bracket. Remember how we want it to be then square bracket. Okay, square bracket. So I'm actually manually changing this though. Okay, so let's just square bracket. I'm just changing the square bracket first. Then what I'm doing is I am going to superscribe it because that is what is required for your thesis. Okay, so I do that. And then the layout, I'm not going to meddle with the layout, but you can if there is something funny about the layout. Normally that is probably what you're dealing with journals. And then I say, when I actually try to close it, it'll ask me whether I want to save it. And I'll say yes. And it'll save as a copy. You maybe want to call it as the new style or Vancouver thesis. Okay, and I say save. You'll have to do this individually for yourself. So now that new output style is created. So this is just so you get a little bit of idea on how EndNote works. And that's it. I will see you on the 9th, unless I bumped you out earlier. Have a good week and weekend.